From the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, this is Nebraska Farmcast. I'm Ryan Evans. In rural areas, leadership is essential to the development of communities. In areas with smaller populations, volunteers often fill leadership positions, with many community members taking on multiple roles. The 2022 Nebraska Rural Poll by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln sought to find out how residents in or near rural communities feel about their leadership. Becky Vogt, Survey Research Manager with the Nebraska Rural Poll, joins me now to discuss the findings. Hey, Becky, it's good to be with you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ryan.
Yeah, so you've got a new article that we've published at cap.unl.edu about some of this. First, what did you find just regarding the overall sentiment of rural Nebraskans about their community leaders, and then their attitudes about the importance of effective leadership?
Well, we gave respondents a list of statements about the leadership in their community, and then they were asked to indicate if they agreed or disagreed with those statements. So some of those statements measured, as you mentioned, the feelings about the leaders in their community, as well as how important they believe effective leadership is to their community. And we found that overall, many rural Nebraskans have positive feelings about their community leadership. We found almost one half, or 48%, agreed or strongly agreed with the statement that their community leaders are effective and do a good job. They were also given a statement that said there's a leadership crisis in their community today. Opinions were somewhat mixed for that item, but we did find that more disagreed with that statement than agreed with it. And furthermore, almost a third neither agreed nor disagreed. So it definitely didn't seem to be true across wide swaths of the population that they felt that there was a leadership crisis. But then we did find that most rural Nebraskans recognize the importance of effective leadership to their communities. We found just under 3/4 agreed or strongly agreed that strong, effective leadership will prevent their community's decline. And just over 2/3 agree that the problems their community faces today can be solved through effective leadership. So we found definitely more consensus on those statements about believing that effective leadership really can be important to their community.
Great. That's interesting. And I know that you also asked through the poll how well local youth are being prepared to be good leaders in the future. You asked respondents to gauge their impression or their sentiment about that. So about how well local youth are being prepared to be the future leaders there. So what did you learn about that?
Yeah, again, similar to that item about the leadership crisis, we had really a mix of opinions on whether or not youth are being prepared to be effective leaders in their community. We've had equal proportions both agree and disagree with that statement. And again, about a third neither agreed nor disagreed with the statement. So definitely wasn't any consensus there on whether or not they feel that youth are being prepared to be good leaders.
I'm just curious, do you have an idea of what people might be thinking of when they're asked that question about are youth being prepared to be good leaders? Like, is it like leadership programming for young people in communities or something else?
Yeah, I think that the things that probably came to mind were, leadership education. Maybe there are opportunities for them to sit on boards or committees in the community. Some communities have gone out of their way to have a youth representative and to hear the input of the youth. So I don't know if it's just things like that they were considering.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And what were some things that the poll told you about attitudes toward engagement with community leadership in rural Nebraska?
Yeah, well, we found that one thing is that technology can be a tool that can be used by the community leaders to engage the residents. We found just over one half, 53%, agreed or strongly agreed that community leaders should use technology such as mobile apps or social media to better engage with residents. And then, not surprising though, this is especially true for younger people, as I work in rural communities, communication seems to always be an issue that they are trying to address. So I think using tools like social media apps or even just keeping your websites updated can help communicate with the younger residents. But as always, many avenues are needed to try to reach everyone. Mm-hmm. And then a second finding in that area, we found most rural Nebraskans believe getting more residents to get involved in the leadership in their community is critical to its future. We had just over 7 in 10 agree or strongly agree that getting more residents to take leadership roles in their community is critical to the future, and only 3% disagreed with that statement. So even though they'll most agree that this is important, time will tell if some of them are willing to step up and serve in those roles.
Right. And even though we're talking so far about rural communities in a general sense, obviously those come in many different sizes. So were you able to notice any distinct trends that revealed themselves for these communities of different sizes?
Yes. First, we found that persons living in or near mid-sized communities, which were populations between 1,000 and 5,000, that was the community size group that was most likely to see positive leadership trends in their community. They were most likely to see effective leadership in their community, as well as opportunities for youth to become future leaders, which we discussed earlier. But we also then found persons living in or near some of the smallest communities, populations between 500 and 1,000, that group was most likely to agree that they have a leadership crisis in their community today. But still, that group didn't even have majority agreeing with that statement as well. But about 4 in 10 persons living in that size of community agreed with the statement. So those were some of the more significant community size differences that we found.
Thank you. And after you've had a chance to kind of digest and look at all the data that came in, are there any conclusions that you draw from the responses regarding the state of leadership in rural communities in Nebraska?
Yeah, first of all, as mentioned in the first question, that really they do see the importance of the effective leadership in their communities. But then when we look at some of those community size differences, they seem to illustrate some of the struggles that smaller communities can face in the leadership arena. They, are seeing population declines, or they might have aging population, and that just leads to a smaller pool from which they can draw potential leaders. And then that can also result in residents serving in multiple roles or for longer terms, which you can see sometimes which effectively keeps the same leadership in place for extended periods, which can be good if they're effective, but that also doesn't always generate new ideas and new thoughts either. But the findings that the mid-sized communities, when they seem to have some advantages in this sphere, and they have a little bit bigger population from which to draw leaders and volunteers, but yet they're still small enough that they can see the impacts of different community initiatives or efforts, so they can see more quickly maybe how leadership does have that impact.
And then last question, does your work on all of these questions that we've been talking about here spur any thoughts on how rural communities can work to improve leadership or sustain quality leadership that's already in place?
Yeah. Well, I myself am not an expert on leadership, but, in UNL, in the Agricultural Leadership Education and Communication Department, Dr. Lindsay Hastings, along with some of her colleagues, she's used some of our previous Rural Poll data in this area in a study, and their results indicated that hope was an important determinant in how belief in leadership impacted civic engagement. Basically, as residents see positive improvements in the community, which gives them hope, then they can be inspired to get more involved in the community. So that finding really helps us see that how quality leadership can be sustained by, having that hope and seeing that impact. Then that can hopefully keep people serving in those leadership roles. And then finally, also in many communities, We do see some people that are known as like community champions who really work to facilitate change outside of traditional elected positions, and they can really help mobilize the community around a shared vision, and many of them are just determined to keep pushing the community forward. So I think this all points for opportunities at rural communities to become prosperous through effective leadership, so they can use both those formal elected positions as well as those informal leaders like community champions.
Great. Thank you very much. You can find more information about the Nebraska Rural Poll, of course, at ruralpoll.unl.edu. And you can find a summary of the results of what we've been talking about here about community leadership with Becky. That's in a new article she has written for our website at cap.unl.edu. Again, Becky Vogt is the survey research manager with the Nebraska Rural Poll. And Becky, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for helping us highlight some of our results.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.